Welcome to What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe.
In this episode, we talked to Maggie McHugh, an innovation specialist from Wisconsin, about project-based learning and how it honors students' humanity and engages students in real-world learning while meeting a number of academic objectives.
Maggie, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. For listeners that don't know who you are, where you're from, can you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch and your role in education?
Absolutely, Josh and Tom, it's great to be with you. I'm coming from LaCrosse, Wisconsin, a little town on the Mississippi River, kind of between Madison and St. Paul and Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, about halfway in between there. I'm a Wisconsin girl through and through, and I teach at a project-based school. It is a charter school, but I know charters across the United States are really different. So we are a public charter. So there's no application to get in. Parents and students just say we want to go there, and it's a random lottery. So completely public. And I teach, my backgrounds are math and English. And currently I serve as the innovation specialist, which is like a super fancy name for a lot of fun things. I do a little teaching, a little coaching, and I tell people a little innovating, which is just sort of wherever the winds take me and the school and whatever needs to happen.
That is so cool. The whole idea, I read that when you filled out your questionnaire, and I was like, yo, an innovation specialist. That
Yeah.
sounds just absolutely cool. What are some of the things that, like, what do you do? What do you dream about? What innovations have you kind of settled on? What have you found? What's new?
Yeah, so some of the innovations take me into thinking about makerspace. I'm currently working with a colleague. We co-teach a class called Innovate. Great name.
Awesome.
Basically allows us to play, and we tell our students it goes no tech to low tech to high tech. And it kind of has a sense of a makerspace, but it also is with the sense of creating and becoming an innovator and entrepreneur. So for example, I have two boys who are in 7th grade, and they created a product that everybody needs, especially Wisconsinites, called the shove glove. And what they had to do is they had to think of a problem. And the problem, if you're a Midwesterner, you know this, or if you know are anywhere cold, when the lining of your glove comes out from between the glove and the lining and you can't get it back in, they have created the shove glove to shove it back in there quickly. So
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome and perfect
it is.
for when your gloves are all mushy and
Exactly. Who needs the shove glove? So that's, a class that I teach to help students. But then within that, we're looking at what are some of the technology supplies our students need. And that would be one aspect of innovation. Another aspect for me, though, is community innovation. How are we developing community partners? How are we getting our students to connect with the community? So last year and into this year, something I work on with our team, because of course it's not just me, right? Like I must say, it is not just me. I have an amazing team around me. Is we have all students go through an interview process. So 6th through 12th graders, every student spent a 10-minute interview, one-on-one, or sometimes it was 2 students with 1 adult, just interviewing for a random job, but enough so that they could understand what are the skills that are going to put me out there. So how do we keep innovating with our curriculum, with our students, with our community, to help our students become college and career ready?
Dude, the shove glove, I feel like Shark Tank needs to be all over that. Like, Mark,
exactly what I was
be an
thinking.
investor. Yeah.
Maybe a couple prototypes, I'm sure. We'll see. These boys have a great mind and heart, and we'll see where their innovation takes them.
So I'm curious how you got into this role. Like how Tom and I haven't heard of an innovation specialist before. So more curious, is it something that you created? Was it something that was opened up for you, or like a little bit of background on that would be awesome.
Yeah, my previous admin and I, we were playing around with some different titles of what a position could be. The position was created with ESSER funds. And the idea was to create more coaches in the building. And in other buildings, a full-time coach is needed. In my building, we have 120 students, and we didn't necessarily need a full-time coach. And so we wanted to create a position that really fit the unique needs of our building, the unique needs of our students. And yeah, he all of a sudden said, let's call you an innovation specialist. And we sort of ran with it. I think a lot of the inspiration initially came from George Couros, if you're familiar with his work, Innovator's Mindset. We do a lot with that. And so, yeah, I'll chalk it up to some George Couros inspiration.
Well, you also talked about the ways that you are preparing your students for life outside of your classroom and some of the projects that you're going through. And I was checking out your website. You've got one going on right now about humanity and what makes us human. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those kinds of projects that your kids are doing? Because I think that one thing that kids ask for out of school is more than just math, more than just reading. They want real world experience with those. So can you tell us a little bit about some of those projects that you have going on?
Yeah. So the Humanity Project actually started during COVID. We were looking for a way to connect our students while we were teaching virtually. And then we were teaching hybrid, right? We went through, I'll just say it, a lot of innovative teaching methods at that time. Maybe innovation didn't always pan out to be wonderful, but in this innovative method, we were working with our students and we were sensing a lack of connection to other people. And I think if we put ourselves in that mindset of 2 years ago, even into today, that lack of connection to other people really seems to be pervasive and that's a middle school project I'm working on. Middle schoolers, and I think all human beings really do crave to be connected. And so the challenge was to connect students by having them just reflect on what they think humanity means. Specifically within that word humanity is the word unity. Right? So what does it mean to be united as humans? And we've taken this really philosophical thought and had students develop their own writings, their own kind of short stories, belief statements about it, depict artistically through photography, through drawing, things that they could do remotely, and now things that we've worked on collaboratively face to face, and create their own postcards. And we've sent these postcards out to the 50 states, and we're trying to get its relatives, its friends, it's kind of that snowball effect of, somebody who knows somebody. And we would send things home. We're sending things home to parents saying, we're looking for anyone who lives in the state of, I'll tell you, New Hampshire was a tough one. That was our last one to try to find, is New Hampshire. And we're just trying to hear back. And when we hear back, we're coloring in that state to recognize that we can have an impact across the United States, just spreading the joy of humanity.
Yeah.
We've also gotten a letter from France, Italy, Japan. And I think the coolest part is the kids love getting snail mail. Like, it is absolutely a joy to see that. Anyone who wants to do this project, something that I failed to do was teach them how to address an envelope. Students don't know how to address envelopes. Most of my students didn't. So I went through way, way, way many more envelopes than I thought. But this joy of connection, this joy of humanity has been something really cool to see and grow and develop. So this is actually the second time I'm doing this project. And I'm really excited to see the connections grow with students.
Yeah, Josh and I have an interesting connection to India, and Harry Krishna, one of these amazing educators, has a pen pal relationship with both Josh's class and my class. And what you're saying is so true, that students love to open a card or see a postcard or get snail mail. I just love that's still a thing. It hasn't gone away. People love to get mail. Your passion for connecting humans is so evident. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm curious, how did you get into the field of education? Now you're this innovator, you're thinking outside the box, you're getting other people to, but how did it all start?
I listened to some of your other podcasts, and it's funny that a common thread for many people seems to be one of two things, which are both my stories. Family members who are teachers, right?
Yeah.
And teachers saying you should be a teacher. Right. And you've obviously listened to all of them. You've been part of all of them, but I think those are the two most prevalent ways people talk about it. And they're very much so my story. My family, very, very proud to say I'm a fourth generation teacher, as are both my sisters. So both my parents are educators. On my dad's side, my grandma actually started teaching in a one-room schoolhouse in rural Wisconsin back when she couldn't be married, had to live with a superintendent, shovel, stoke the fire, all that kind of stuff. Married my grandpa, and then several years, 6 kids later, went back and was a third grade teacher.
That's cool.
And before that, her mother, we have some ledgers of people trading eggs and different like berries and fruits and stuff for reading and writing lessons
Wow.
that she taught out of her own home, which turn of the century Wisconsin, that's rural Wisconsin that was teaching. So yeah, fourth generation educator. And then my specific disciplines of English and math really came from other teachers, high school teachers and middle school teachers who continue to develop this love and just give me guidance and reassurance as I went into my collegiate years.
Awesome. That's a great story. And Tom and I are lucky enough, and Tom actually helps run this program. Our district looks at kids that we say, oh, they would be amazing in the classroom in the future. And we help build that and instill that thought in them. So hopefully we're getting great educators in the future. And Maggie, unfortunately right now, that's not the case. Teachers are leaving super quick. So I guess my question is then, how do we get people to not only come into education, but then stay in it? Because the three of us and those listening know that it's not easy. And I think sometimes from the outside, people say you're a glorified babysitter, and it's so much deeper than that. And it's such an empathetic job that it can pull at you and burn you out pretty quick if you don't have the right balance. So again, I guess just my question is, how do we get good educators, and then how do we, in your opinion, keep them in the field?
Yeah, I talked to my student teacher about this because at times I think those of us who've been in the field, we do lose touch with some of that. And yes, there's definite feelings of burnout. But so I talked to my student teacher, who's obviously much closer to this, and she was telling me just some of the systems issues that get in the way. That I think sometimes we know, but we maybe forget, or we maybe don't know. Some of the pathways to getting their degree, not being able to work or work limited hours while student teaching. We know that that's an issue. Just additional financial burdens. But to her, one of the things when I said, okay, you've heard about money issues, you've heard public criticism, like you've heard all those negatives, there's been systems barriers for you, but you've somehow been able to overcome or to move past or to accept those burdens and know you'll be having college debt. Why did you still choose it? Right. That's what I was curious. And that's what I dug in with her. Why did you still choose that? And she said it's the stories of teachers and the teachers in her lives. And she said she could just sit there and tell story after story of teachers. And in telling her story, a really unique thing happened. She started talking about a teacher, and eventually I said, wait, Mr. Lindsay? And she goes, yes. I go, Matt Lindsay? And she goes, yes. And I go, he was a colleague of mine, a classmate of mine in college. And I hadn't heard his name in years. And so it's just crazy to know that 17, 18 years ago, when Mr. Lindsay and I were classmates studying to be teachers, here I am with a student of his who he inspired. And now I'm, finishing the journey with her as a student teacher. So I think it's continuing to tell our stories, continuing, as you said, tapping those students saying, you should be a teacher. And just having this strong continued network I don't know if I see the money issues, the public criticism ever necessarily going away. And that might sound sad, but I see that. I think we're attuned to it in education, but almost all careers have the criticism. They hear it, right? And all of them go through the amazing bubbles too, like in COVID when we should have been paid billions of dollars, right? And nurses and healthcare workers and everybody was lifted up and then we're lifted down. It's cyclical, but what can break through cycles or what can stay true is our stories, right? And our constancy in students' lives. And I think that's what I'm going to continue to hold on to, is just telling the stories.
I think that what you said is so spot on, the power of stories and the power of sharing the humanity of why we're in education, what we got into education for. And I love, absolutely love that here you were, like you said, going to college with this guy, and now he's part of your student teacher's journey. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
How do you stay inspired? How do you stay um true to who you are, true to being innovative, true to having a student teacher, right? And
Mhm.
inspiring them. Are there books, are there activities, are there outlets that you go to? Like how do you stay true to you?
Oh, honestly, for me, it's digging deep into the relationships with students, and finding those opportunities. No, not just finding the opportunities, creating the opportunities and celebrating the opportunities to lift our students up in really positive lights. So, as a project based learning school, our students complete personal projects. Other places call them like Genius Hour or all that stuff. But our students for 3 months dig into a topic they're really passionate about. And then we have a showcase event, which we just had about a week ago. And at that showcase event, the students are just sharing their passion for the projects they've created. And so, whereas one student created a project where he studied race cars and the physics of how race cars like follow each other in the air and the drafting and all of that, another student looked at animation and developed several different animated characters and had you look at, could you tell their identity based off how she dressed them? And was looking at gender identity within like characters in animation. And then yet another student talked about biking, the different types of tires and what kind of tires you need here in winter, and looked all about the different components of bikes. And so students just across the board had these passions, shared them out. And I walk around, I'll be honest, I was walking around and I'm looking at students and I go, oh, there's going to be a lot of growth in that student from this first project to the third project. And then a parent came up to me and they just said, wow, isn't it just so awesome? All these kids can just talk about things they're excited about. And I had to step back and go, yes, this actually is pretty darn incredible. And so I think sometimes as teachers, we have to take off that critical lens and just step back and celebrate the fact that here we're 120 young human beings talking in public about something they're passionate about. And here were parents, family members, friends, community members there to celebrate academics, there to celebrate their student. And so the more opportunities we can lift students up to share their passions, whether that's in academics. I know there's a lot of emphasis on like sports and musics, but through community service events too, seeing those students in those positive lights, that it's hard to not re-engage in that passion.
I've been doing passion projects and Genius Hour for, it's probably been 6 or 7 years now. And I am always amazed at, you think you know a kid, right? And then when you watch them do that project, you learn so much more about them. So I think about, like you were saying, a lot of kids, when you're talking and getting to know them, they'll go down that pathway of sports. But when you're starting to introduce passion projects and you talk about like, here's some of the things that kids have done in the past, or here's some opportunities, and their eyes are opened to so many things. They're like, whoa, that's really cool. And so we've had kids make hats, beanies for the children's hospital, and all sorts of just amazing things that I think you're right. When I first was told that I really want to sew, I'm like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to tell my principal, like, we're going to sew in class and I know nothing about it. But then they open it up to so much more. And it is truly inspiring to, like you said, lift them up and watch them grow in the way that they want to.
Yeah, Josh, I think I have similar reactions when a kid's like, I want to sew. And you're like, but yet it's their passion and their excitement. And I think the other thing you touched on is how students can become activists through their passion projects, and they can impact the community. I've seen students, kindergarten through, high school want to make a difference, right? And so that reminded me of this little girl, Sophia, whose project was all about making a little free pantry for the homeless. So you've probably seen like little free libraries.
Yeah.
And then our community has little free food pantries. And she wanted to make a little free pantry for homeless people because where our school is located, across the street in the park, there is a growing number of unsheltered people. And so she was collecting donations. She called our local city council. She got emailed permissions. She hasn't yet put it in because of 3 months. It takes much longer, but she started the whole process. And then at that showcase, parents came up and actually offered more assistance. And so we said, you're on the second round of a project. You could just keep going. And she said, really? And I said, absolutely. Like, keep going with this passion. And so those opportunities, like you said, Josh, for students to make a difference as well, that is just another opportunity to re-engage with the joy of teaching and learning.
Maggie, what you said earlier, excuse me, I want to just make a quick connection if I can.
Yeah.
You know, we get so bogged down sometimes in the day-to-day, the mundane, the assessments, the behaviors that we see sometimes. But
Right.
we really do, as educators, have this amazing front row seat to see kids grow and these little humans just develop their interests, and whether it be sewing like Josh said, or like taking on a community improvement project like your students doing up there in Wisconsin. I hope that we as educators never ever lose that sense of wonder, and that we're watching little humans develop and share and really grow that sense of awe. I hope we never lose that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think when you talked earlier about how important it is for us to tell our stories, right? Like, there's been times this year that I'm feeling down and like, man, this is a hard year. I don't know how I'm going to make it to the end of December. But when we share stories like that, and you're sitting here reminding me of, I know that second semester we're going to do our passion projects. I know blank. I've got a student who I now have his little brother, but he wanted to do stuff with basketball, and it turned into this project of trying to put night lights, floodlights up on a local basketball court.
Cool.
It didn't end up working out for him because of all the nuances that had to happen, but he learned so much because he had a candidate that was running for mayor come in and talk to him, and he talked to OPPD, which is our power district, and he was talking to all these people. So he learned so much more, even though his end goal wasn't what he really wanted. And so just sharing those stories for me, it's a way for me to relight my fire. And so when we go back to that question of how do we keep educators, I think that this is you are 100% spot on. Share our stories.
Well, and now, Josh, imagine the power of this younger sibling. Maybe they're interested in basketball, maybe not, but sharing that story to the class and seeing if someone wants to pick up where he left off. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is still an issue. And I think students see issues in our community that we don't, or students see solutions that we don't. We have a huge task force in our area continuing to look at this issue of homelessness. And yet this girl's idea is simple and powerful and a start, right? And sometimes we get so into the huge system that we forget just this beautiful little kernel of an idea and how impactful that can be.
Yeah, those little kernels are so powerful, and kudos to you all for really like to giving them the power, empowering them to be those citizens, those change makers that we want our society to be full of. Um,
Yeah.
how do you invest in relationships with your students? I think that's another piece, right? Like we want to empower kids, we want to have them grow their expertise and their knowledge. So how do you invest in those relationships when maybe you don't know their interests, or maybe you don't know who they are at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. So a really cool thing about our school is that I have sixth graders up through 12th graders, and a lot of those students stay with us from middle school in through high school. And so I work with sixth graders. I'm a sixth grade math teacher, but I also have seniors and I teach a senior English capstone class. And right now, 8 of my seniors were with me as sixth graders. And so it's been really cool to see their journey over, gosh, 7 years, but also to recognize as seniors, I've needed to re-engage with them too. Who are you now as, as a senior about to embark on whatever it is that life's going to take you? And so to think about that and to think I have this incredible opportunity to continue knowing them, but for outsiders coming into our school or any school, especially I'm thinking of like my student teacher, pre-service teachers, it's overwhelming to get to know students and develop that relationship. Um, so I challenged my student teacher to pick 2 students and do a 2 by 5. So for 5 days, spend 2 extra minutes with that student each day, just getting to know them, talking to them, and developing a deeper relationship. So that 2 extra minutes a day, 5 minutes, they've spent 10 minutes deeply engaging with that student, getting to know them, asking them questions. And so it's amazing just that little intentional time, how that can grow into a really deep relationship. And I challenge them always not to always pick the easiest student, the student who they think will be easiest to get to know. Choose maybe a student who's quieter. Choose a student who maybe seems like a struggle to you. Choose a student who isn't in the center of a lot of friends. Choose the student who is in the center of a lot of friends, but maybe seems like they're joking all the time and deflecting and not going deeply. So I think that 2 by 5, 2 minutes, 2 intentional minutes a day for 5 days. How many of our students you want to choose, 2 per class period, 2 total, 2 from your homeroom, can really go deeply into developing those relationships.
I like that you pointed out, don't pick the easy ones, right? Like we gotta get to those kids that are hard to reach, because kids ask for love sometimes in the most unloving ways, and we got to get to them. And the quiet ones too, man, those kids that can sit there and they do what they're supposed to, they do what they're asked, so you think everything's fine. We got to get to those kids too. Right?
Yeah.
So I love that, just reminding ourselves, don't start with the easy kids. Get in there, build those relationships, because then when the behaviors start to boil up, right, that investment is there. And Tom always has a great quote about kids are going to get your time one way or the other. So how are you going to give that time to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I got at least one more question.
Okay.
You've been talking about project-based. I've heard of project-based learning, use it, but I have never heard of a project-based school. And so I'm curious about how that works. Like, what is it? What give it all to me.
Yeah. So, as I said earlier, we're a charter school. So our charter specifically calls for 3 pillars: project-based learning, personalized learning, which I talked a little bit about the students' personal projects, and community-based learning. And so project-based learning, our philosophy is students will learn deeply and authentically through projects, high quality, rigorous, gold standard projects. We then, as we call ourselves advisors, not just teachers, we're advisors. We advise, we guide our students. We develop projects such as the Humanity Project you mentioned for students to engage in their academics. So a project I finished just before that was called Geophoto. So we learned geometry, geography, and geology through photography. So I took high school students. Students love photography. They absolutely, I mean, yes, they're on their phones clicking photos, but I then gave students actual cameras, and it was mind-boggling what we had to teach them, like how to like hold the button like halfway down and then all the way down to like click the camera. And that like the screen wasn't touch screen and they had to like look through the little camera hole and stuff. So it was really fun. Students learned geometry. We would go out and we would take photos and we would examine them for lines. And we would talk about like how do vertical lines, horizontal lines, diagonal lines, leading lines, S-curves, all this stuff impact a photo. How do professional photographers use lines to enhance their photography? How do they use geometric transformations, reflection, rotation slides to enhance their photography? We looked at photography from a geological sense, looked at rocks, looked at weathering. How can we actually analyze our Earth through photography? We looked at how humans impacted the Earth through photography. So we wove all of these standards in through the medium of photography, and students created photo essays looking at a specific topic of their choosing, answering that question of how do humans impact the environment through photography. And so for us, I use it through a standards-based lens. But what it is it's just taking and having a really huge driving question, helping students analyze their driving question and coming up with a way to show their learning that's really authentic. That isn't just maybe a test that you just quick take and pass off. There can still be tests in project-based learning, but is that really an authentic outcome? Is that what most people in their jobs or careers do? So if you were a photographer, your outcome would be some sort of photo essay or display, which we held at our local arts center. We had students put together their own short films, and they did a film screening at the Rivoli Theater, an old school theater in our community. We had students, speaking of fashion, we had a group do Fashion Forward. They put together their own runway show, looking at how historical and fashion impacts today's fashion. They did all this cool like stitching and stuff. So it's really helping students explore concepts, but then coming up with a way to show it that really just merges some sort of authentic outcome. So that's project-based learning, and that's what we do in the majority of our classes. Not all of our classes, because being in a project is a lot. And we don't want to like it'd be like, those days I don't know about you, but I seemed like in high school for me, there'd be that day where like half your class had tests and it was just overwhelming. So we kind of make sure we balance student schedules so that it's not all projects. But everything is taught with that sort of authentic lens.
So Maggie, I've learned a lot, and this has been absolutely, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being generous with your time and talking with Josh and I. We always end the episodes with one last question. In the 60s, there was this song about what the world needed. There were mountains enough to climb, but in your opinion, what does the world need now?
Yeah, I think the song had it right though. Love, sweet love, but I was really thinking about that, and I feel like our English language actually fails us here. Because we only have this one word love. And I teach middle school, and so there's still the sixth grader who'll say, like, I love pizza. Well, if you love it, why don't you marry it? But we don't have those different words. And it, not to get all super philosophically, but I was taught in my education about the Greek, and the Greek have so many different words for love. Like they have the word philia, that's kind of that like love, right? The you love pizza, I philia pizza. They have storge, which is our familial love, like how you love your family and everything. They have eros, where we should get the word like erotic love. They have this word though, agape, which is like this deep, unconditional, like never ending love. And they have words for like self-love. And that's what I feel like our world needs love, but we need to define love better. We need to define the types of love better, and we need to strengthen those types of love. And I don't know if there's a Greek word for like teacher to student love, but that's what I feel like we continue to give so much as educators is our love for our students, our love for our who these, as you said, little human beings are becoming. And I think maybe as we continue to share our stories, that the world will see that love and embrace that love and just continue to give and reciprocate that love. So I guess I do. I want more love, sweet love.
That's a great answer, and I think that is something that we all enter the field of education with, is that agape love for what we do and remembering our why. So Maggie, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It has been a joy. I have learned so much, and I am so appreciative.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Maggie.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took your time to listen.
Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives, and hopefully what the world needs now is helping you to sustain your inspiration as we journey through this school year together. If it is, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps us to get other inspirational educators' stories out.
We hope that as you head out, you remember the biggest factor that plays into student success is you. Your love, your passion, your empathy, your dedication is exactly what the world needs now. Thank you for all that you do. Have a good one.